Yo guys, what's up? In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint red lightning on the Talon. Let's get to it. First off, we're going to start with some true metallic metal. Now, you don't have to just use, say, like lead belcher or gunmetal, wash it black, and then highlight it. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're painting the whole thing with Vallejo model color metallic black, which is an air paint. This gives a really dark but still very metallic, very shiny effect to our metal. We're then coming in with some gunmetal, thinned a little bit, and we're just going to start brushing upwards towards the brightest points here. And this is how we're going to start building our gradient, building our highlights on this true metallic metal claw. We want this to stand out from the rest of his arm. We want it to be nice and bright and shiny, but still have some really, really dark, kind of evil, moody, dramatic looking areas to it for our lightning to start in and to really start to highlight essentially. Once that part's done, we're taking some scale 75 speed metal. This is a little bit thick, so we're thinning just a little bit of water again, and we're once again going to hit all of those upper edges, really start to bring this claw to life a little bit. We want to get a very, very bright tip to all of these claws, because that's going to increase the contrast between our lightest point and our darkest point and really help draw the eye to the Talon. This is one of the main focal points on Abaddon. I'm going to go through a load of work in a minute to give it some red lightning, so this part, the setup for it, has to be absolutely spot on. You're going to see this from anywhere on the table. Look at how it catches the light. It's very, very eye-catching. Now, let's do some lightning. Whenever you need to paint a random pattern, it can be a little tricky. Basically, the way our brains work is to identify patterns, and that means that when we're trying to draw something that's random, those patterns start to come to the foreground of our brain, and we start to replicate those patterns. So when you've got to do, say, 5 claws of the Talon of Horus, and you want them all to look a little bit different, it's very difficult to make sure they actually are. One of the things that you can do about this, and you can get yourself some truly random patterns, is you could use some reference material. This isn't just for lightning, it could be anything that's a naturally occurring thing, like flames, for instance. But once you've got some images, just go and Google some. You've got some source material. You can replicate some of that if you're not able to just randomly create these strikes of lightning. If you don't, you can get a hold of something like Photoshop or GIMP, where you can use a lightning brush preset to create some bolts of lightning. You could even take a photograph of your miniature, put some of those over the areas for like the claw in this case, or a sword, or somewhere on the armor, whatever it might be, and you can use that. That's only half the battle though. Once you've managed to get yourself something you know will be a random pattern when it goes onto the miniature, the next thing to do is to make sure your paint is the right consistency. We need to paint a line that is just thick enough to get at least 2 highlight passes in, but not so thick that you've got big fat lines all over your claw or sword or whatever. So with your paint, make sure it's a consistency that allows it to easily flow onto the brush tip when your brush is dipped into it on your wet palette. And if you're not using wet palette, you should probably look one up. But importantly, it doesn't distend the brush tip. As long as the brush still stays to a nice sharp point, you should be pretty much where you need to be. Once you've got that, start painting onto the miniature, and remember, keep those lines thin enough that it doesn't expand all over the claw, but thick enough that you can get 2 highlights within them. We're going to do more than that, but you'll see what happens later in the video. There you are, and once that first step is done, grab yourself some straight up CANT red. If you can't find it, you can use Evil Sunz Scarlet. That's pretty good, but this is a great alternative. Now, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so and hit the bell button. And if you like videos like this one, then do consider joining in on Patreon or Twitch. On Twitch, I stream live 4 days a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sunday nights from 9 p.m. BST, and Saturday mornings from 11 a.m. also BST. You can come and join in, ask questions, and get live answers back. You can get feedback on miniatures in the Work in Progress gallery, and we do giveaways every month as well. We also have a Patreon where you'll get videos just like this one uploaded every other week, as well as written guides every week. And I'd like to thank the following people who have signed up so far in May: Abdul Masawa Rareich, Marley Lines Diamond, Andrew Evans, Weird Boy, Rhiannon Ronald, Nerdachino, and Daniel Ridings. Thank you to all of you guys for signing up and being part of the Patreon community there. Really, really cannot express just how much I appreciate your support, especially as we're taking the business onto a full-time thing. It's fantastic. Thank you, all of you. Hopefully, for the rest of you, we'll see you in the streams. With your red, though, you're looking to get a highlight inside each of those lines. You can see in the images here that we're just kind of brushing just within those areas. We want to still retain some of that darkness around it and on some of the forks in our lightning as well. And once all of that's done, here's what you're looking at. You've got a nice set of lightning starting to come into a very bold red element. This is the second brushed highlight within the lightning, and for some people this step's going to be a little bit unusual. Essentially, what you need to do is you need to take your highlight and brush from within the lightning up to one of the points where it forks. And the reason you need to do that is because you want your highlight to kind of fade in to that. Think about a gradient that you've seen on anything. That's basically what we're going to start accomplishing here with our brushstroke. The shape you'll end up painting will basically be an elongated teardrop going from some part of the lightning to that point where another part branches off from it. If you do this, you'll get that little fade going through, and it will really help sell the next several highlights, which will sell the overall effect a little bit more. This is why we need to make that initial set of passes for our lightning, the patterning we put down originally, just thick enough to get this done. I'm still using a size 1 Winsor & Newton because the point is absolutely spot on and it's a brilliant brush for me. It holds enough paint to get the job done whilst also still having that precision. But if you're finding this a little bit difficult, by all means switch to a smaller brush. Keep that paint nice and thin to allow that flow off the brush, but make sure that it's not so thin you can't get done in one pass the brushstroke that you need. So there's a little bit of balancing there. Test it out on something like a piece of plastic card, your thumbnail, whatever it is that you want to use, just to ensure that you have got that right before you start putting the paint on the miniature. There you go. And just for clarity here, whenever you have a bit of lightning that has, say, 3 tines coming out of it, draw from each of those tines towards that point where they all converge. That way you're going to get that gradient from all angles and really sell that effect. Apologies for the mohawk there. Clearly it needs a little bit of a trim. Once you've done all of that, you'll start to see this come to be a little bit brighter. You've got more of that initial red and that first red pass in there showing through, but we're starting to get a little bit brighter. We're going to work from the same mix, but we're going to add in some more Flash GITZ yellow. And from this point onwards, we're doing everything with this one mix of paint. Here you can see we're really, really up close, and we're putting in very, very small now highlights into these areas. This is super crucial. You may need to practice your brush control a little bit before doing this, but as long as you get your consistency right, look at how careful we're being here. And we can do that because the brush tip is a perfect point. I've had this brush for about 2.5 months now. It's still going strong because it's a good quality brush. So well worth investing in, and of course taking care of it when you do. Once you've got all of those down, we're starting to get something now that looks a little bit more orange, but we wanted red lightning. Don't worry about that. We're going to make sure this looks red by the end of it. We're going to add in even more Flash GITZ yellow to the mix. I'm going to go back, and now we're just putting on almost a specular highlight. There's a little bit of a tail on it here and there, but we're hitting the elements of the lightning that we want to have that extra bit of power, extra little bit of pop to. And again, it's a case of essentially going all the way up to the points where they all converge, hitting those extra little bits of highlight on there, and ensuring those are the bits that really draw the eye. We're also going to make sure we hit all of the power generators on each of the claws as well, because that's where our lightning is going to come from. We want that to have a nice extra bit of glow to it. It makes sense, right? That's where all of this power is coming from. That's going to be the bright point as well. So now we've got what's definitely some orange lightning, and we're about to do something to it which is going to be just a little bit strange, but bear with me. We're taking some Dala Rowney white ink. We've added that into our mix. So what we have now is a extremely bright off yellow color. We're using this and we're just adding in tiny little specular highlights. And this is going to be something that gives us our absolute brightest point on these claws. Now, I actually did a second pass with this where I took an even smaller amount of white ink just by itself and put that into the middle of some of, but importantly not all of, these spikes. And you can see that we've got a couple extra bright. That's fine. We want that variation. Now, though, to get our lightning red, we're taking some scale color intensity red, and we're applying this all over the lightning. We're also allowing it to feather out a little bit onto the claw. This is going to give us a nice subtle glow, and as soon as that goes down, you can see it's looking a lot more red than it was. I left this to dry, did 2 passes just to really build the opacity of that red, but it works as a filter over everything else. So the bright yellow and the bright white really goes into the red part of that color spectrum, and then when you finished off, here's what you've got. Red lightning all over the Talon of Horus. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you do, please leave a like. Leave some comments letting me know what you liked about it and where you're going to use this technique yourself. Next week, we'll have a Drachnien tutorial over on Patreon. Hopefully you guys can check that out, but if not, we'll see you in the streams. Peace out, everybody.